Hello, Brobs. We're finally going to finish this goddamn chapter. Napoleon, bisexual emperor. Talk about his angelic features. He kind of looks like a fucking potato head. Let's be honest. I think we're on page 38. 1, 2, 3, 4. Almost 6 pages left. This book is ponderous. Stage management played an essential part in his famous gift for recognizing soldiers on parade. One of his generals, usually Lobau, prepared a list of men who were to be called out, showing details of their services and their exact place on parade. Napoleon stopped opposite them and called out their names. They stepped forward, swelling with pride. LGBT pride, obviously, and the impression was made, but confusion reigned when the drill went wrong. Some of Napoleon's other tricks led to ridiculous scenes. He would ask for the name of the bravest man on parade, and provided with a name almost at random, would decorate or promote the man on the spot. Sometimes another would protest that he was really much braver. Commanding officers would become confused, and the emperor would storm and rant at them, for he was much addicted to abusing senior officers in front of their troops, a habit unworthy of a general. Some of the scenes are well nigh incredible. One of the worst was at Valladolid. What does it say, Valladolid? Sounds clunky. Where on parade he hysterically abused General Legendre, who had been chief of staff to General Dupont when he capitulated at Belen. This had been the first chink in the armed might of Napoleon's France, and to him it was an unbearable memory. General Thibault's eyewitness account of the astounding scene is in a recent book, Napoleon in His Time, by Jean Savant. I think I have that. Did I buy that yesterday? Who becomes one of the most severe critics by the simple process, as their Canadian would say, of letting Napoleon's contemporaries relate their experiences and opinions of him. Some of his admirers thus became his worst denigrators, and descriptions of Napoleon's sudden, uncontrolled rages abound in this and in many other books. Those fine, calm features could become evil, contorted with fury, and the whole man could become so terrifyingly malignant that admirers who had come to worship left the presence scared, disillusioned, and aware of having been in contact with something evil. A great Englishman, Sir Stamford Raffles, who visited Napoleon in St. Helena, went there full of admiration for a great man and sympathy for his present state. He was subjected to no special rudeness, yet he came away with feelings of horror, disgust, and alarm. He wrote a 25-page letter to his friend Alexander Hare in Borneo, describing a typical Napoleonic interview, with the usual salvo of questions, but did not mince his words in recording his impressions of this extraordinary character, certainly the greatest man of his age. Believe me, Hare, this man is a monster. That he has none of those feelings of the heart which constitute the real man. I saw in him a man determined and vindictive, without one spark of soul, but possessing a capacity and talent calculated to enslave mankind. He is, in short, all head and no heart. A man who may, by his ability, command respect, but by his conduct can never ensure the affection of anyone, with an asterisk. Let's see what this bullshit says. The letter is printed in full in Ruffles of the Eastern Ides by Charles Würzburg, Hotter and Stout, in 1954. This was the impression left with a man of undoubted intellect and knowledge of men, who, I repeat, went to his interview with Napoleon in a spirit of admiration and sympathy, Clearly, Napoleon was not trying that day. There was no longer much point in trying to charm anyone, except those on whom he depended. And the story of how, in St. Helena, he played the members of his household against each other, keeping them bound to him not only by devotion but by hopes of ultimate gain. This is a depressingly sordid end to the great epic. But now, such is the maddening perplexity of trying to get at the truth of this many-sided enigma. It is fair to record the experience of another visitor to Longwood House, a Scots naval captain, Basil Hall, or is it Basil? Basil Hall, who saw Napoleon in 1817. Hall's father, 10 years older than Napoleon, had been with him at the military school in Brienne, and the emperor had remembered him all his life, as he told his son, because he had been the first Englishman he had ever met. Perhaps for that reason, Basil Hall was given a long and friendly interview, with the old Napoleonic magnetism switched full on. Apart from a momentary fit of scorn, when Hall convinced him that the inhabitants of the island of Lo Chu had really never had any wars, Bonaparte was in excellent humor. And even when the captain forgot himself and became too familiar, he was soon put at his ease. The brilliant and sometimes dazzling expression of his eye could not be overlooked, but it was seen only when his interest was aroused. The visitor found it impossible to imagine an expression of more extreme mildness than that which played over his features during the whole interview. The observant naval officer was perhaps a little adrift when he thought that Napoleon displayed every sign of perfect health and a mind at ease, but he made one observation of significance to a clinician which will be mentioned in its proper place. Napoleon seemed genuinely interested to hear that his old acquaintance was now president of the Royal Society of Edinburgh, or is it Edinburgh, and quizzed his son as to whether he contributed to the sometimes controversial Edinburgh Review. Is it Edinburgh? Clearly, Napoleon was trying that day and exuded charm. Charm was not the only weapon which he used to gain his ends. If his violent outbursts of rage were sometimes feigned in order to scare adversaries into submission, I kind of was expecting a comma there, but there we go. There we go, bruvs. It was noticed that the more violent his tempers, the quicker they subsided, to be succeeded by calm. This, together with his reputation for self-control and his penchant for theatricality, led to the belief that his tempers were sometimes staged for effect. He certainly liked to make sure of a good audience for some of his scenes, as he did for one of the more obviously staged exhibitions, the stormy scene with the British ambassador Lord Whitworth. In 1803, Napoleon had decided to end the uneasy peace, which followed the Treaty of Amiens, 1802, and tried to provoke Lord Whitworth into appearing to play the part of the aggressor. In this familiar gambit, exploited by more than one dictator, he gave a performance worthy of Hitler, with his patience exhausted. But many years later, after his stormy quarrel with Hudson Lowe in St. Helena, he said, Good God, that is the second time in my life I have made a mess of things with the English. Their complacency is more than I can stand, and I say more than I should. So after all, the historians who have assumed that the momentous attack on Lord Whitworth was planned beforehand may be wrong. Perhaps Napoleon's self-control really did fail him, and for a reason with which, dare we confess it, many non-English readers, including Scotsmen, may secretly sympathize. If Napoleon's occasional rough treatment of senior officers was inspired by the spirit of Voltaire's remark that the English found it a good thing to kill an admiral from time to time to encourage the others, then it was bad psychology and certainly failed to have that effect. Count de Ségur described the violent tirade directed at Wintzingerode captured German general serving with the Russians, who, as a German, was regarded by Napoleon as one of his subjects and therefore a traitor. He ended by bawling, "Guards, lay hold of that man." But the guards did nothing, behaving like men who were accustomed to seeing such violent scenes come to nothing. As the de Segur tells the tale, one can almost hear the soldiers saying, "The old man's in another of his tempers." Surely he must have realized that scenes such as this one on parade at Valladolid, where he screams shrill abuse at a defenseless general, and the wrong one at that lowered him in the eyes of soldiers. His image was further tarnished by his habit of using foul and incredibly vulgar language to all ranks. He had just wanted to assume an appearance of anger. Had he just wanted to assume an appearance of anger, he would hardly have intended to let it go so far beyond what was needed to overawe and impress, and to overflow in a way which lessened the dignity which was so important to him. So I believe that there was nothing feigned about most of his notorious outbursts of rage and wicked tantrums, which were violent and unpredictable. They had so often culminated in actual assaults on inoffensive people that some statesmen and courtiers were so afraid of him that they confessed to feeling physically ill before an interview with the emperor. Hateful it may be to compare this great historical figure with Hitler, but here and there it is hard to avoid. From a pamphlet, Anecdotes sur le cours et les interviews de la famille de Napoleon Bonaparte, published anonymously in Paris in 1818, we learn that in the climax of his tempers he sometimes rolled on the floor like a demented man. Privé de raison, privé de raison. He fucking rolled on the floor. That's brilliant, kind of. Let's read that again. No, I'm not going to, because then I have to read that title. Making due allowance for war propaganda, we are still left with enough reliable contemporary evidence to justify the conclusion that there were many disgraceful exhibitions which could only blacken the name of a great man. In fact, no one regretted them more than Napoleon himself. He often said that those who disregarded the wild and often cruel orders which he gave at such times served him best. Duroc, his most intimate and faithful friend, often assumed the function of tempering the wind of his master's passions. We know that Napoleon could appear calm, confident, and unconcerned in moments of stress, and the reaction from such iron self-control may have triggered off some of the outbursts which sullied his reputation. But these uncontrollable rages, and I would emphasize that they were sometimes wildly uninhibited and quite beyond the range of normal fits of temper, must be regarded as evidence of an unbalanced mentality. Not even his bitterest calumniators have ever hinted that his strange moods and violent behavior were caused by alcohol. Whatever some brandy advertisements might seem to imply, Napoleon hardly ever touched the stuff. His Mameluke Rostam carried a small silver flask of brandy. What the hell's a Mameluke? Or is it Mameluke? Mameluke Rostam carried a small silver flask of brandy, of which his valet Constant assures us Napoleon seldom or never made use. Half a bottle of Chambertin, usually diluted with water, was his daily ration. A man who strove so assiduously to be a true Frenchman could hardly have taken less. After his surrender to the British, he was content with claret, but tended to drink a little more of it. A man like Napoleon, hardly ever still, hardly ever doing nothing, thinking, talking, dictating, even in his bath, needed no stimulants, but would have been a candidate for the tranquilizers so excessively used in our neurotic age. Dalliance and trivial conversation with his bird-brained Joseph. This guy's objective helped him, and after his relaxing hot baths, he liked to be rubbed all over with Conde de Cologne by one of his valets. His only attempts at smoking when he used a hookah given to him by the Turkish ambassador was not a success, and the experiment was never repeated. I do not know whether he objected to other people smoking, but would guess that he did because he was hypersensitive to bad smells and claimed to be able to detect the smell even if it came from a distant cellar, underground passage, or sewer. He was a compulsively and untidy snuff taker and was believed to have kept the snuff loose in his pockets, as did Frederick the Great. However, according to his valets, Constant and Marchand, his pockets were specially made and leather lined for the purpose. Constant, though admitting that Napoleon did scatter snuff about his clothes and the carpets, says that he often used snuff boxes and sometimes only sniffed at their contents. He was not a self-indulgent man, though he liked his surroundings to be luxurious and magnificent, and he was, of course, weighted on hand and foot as befitted his position. He frequently slept in his little iron camp bed, even when not on campaign. His increasing corpulence, which became positively enormous in middle life, was not due to overeating. He ate very little, but ate it too fast, and as everyone's plates were whisked away when he had finished, his staff learned to bolt their food or go hungry. So wait, he didn't eat out of... I don't even want to rehash it. He ate very little, but ate it too fast, and as everyone's plates were whisked away when he had finished, his staff learned to bolt their food or go hungry. He told Dr. Ferraud de Beauregard in Elba that he knew his draft Saint-Charont d'Eu, and if he passed it, his stomach rejected the surplus, so he seldom needed a doctor. Writers of previous generations, whilst admitting, I thought that was improper, whilst admitting that the secrets of Napoleon's soul can never be uncovered, the threads in the tapestry of his uniquely colorful life unraveled, nor the mechanisms of his stupendous mind fully comprehended, have nevertheless almost reverently commanded the study of Napoleon as a contribution to our knowledge of the power of personality, of great leadership, and of the mastery of men and circumstances. But our generation has seen rather too much of dictators, and we may perhaps be excused if we look upon such studies as the investigation of a disease which can have the gravest result for millions of innocent sufferers from the consequences of megalomania. Significantly, it is in some of the books which doctors have written about Napoleon that this disease is actually given names such as the malady of power, malady of Caesars, and even Caesarism or Caesaritis, self-explanatory, even if hideously inelegant terms. However confident a doctor may feel that the root of his patient's troubles is planted in the mind, it is his duty, first of all, to eliminate organic disease by a thorough physical examination. To this end, we must now take a look at Napoleon's medical history, and it will be seen that certain surprising facts about his body can help to illuminate for us the probable workings of his mind. Well, that was enlightening. Let me put a placeholder here because I'm not reading any further. I do want to read this book, actually.